Now, have you ever wondered how all those evil villains you see in Hollywood movies manage to pull off speaking all those crazy foreign languages so convincingly?
Und schneidern.
Well, the secret is, some of the actors who play these villains actually speak multiple languages themselves.
Je parle un peu français, oui.
We're talking about big names here like Tom Hiddleston, Michael Fassbender and Viggo Mortensen, who have gone to great lengths to master languages for their roles.
Si.
In this video, you're going to get an insider's look at their language learning methods. So whether you're struggling to pick up a new language or just want to be more like your favorite on-screen anti-hero, well, you're going to love these proven tips and tricks.
I'm Loki. You may have heard of me.
That was for New York.
I like her.
So you know Loki, right? God of Mischief, the guy with the tricks. Rings a bell? People say that Tom Hiddleston had to learn a language called Old Norse in order to play Loki, which is kind of crazy because that's the language that the actual Vikings spoke. But did he really learn it? Well, let's find out. My name is Olly. I'm a linguist and author who happens to love the movies of Marvel in particular. So I got really curious about what goes on behind the scenes with all those languages that they speak. And the first cool thing that I discovered is Tom Hiddleston is really good at accents.
Morning, darling. What I really want, you can help me out, is I'd like a nice cup of tea and a pan of chocolate. Like old school foot would be like,
Yeah.
Who are ya? Who are ya?
Who are ya?
Who are ya?
I hope it's not the only thing I'm good at.
No, it's definitely not the only thing he's good at. First of all, his character Loki speaks a bunch of languages that he needs for all of his cunning schemes. How many is it? I'm not even sure, but the most fun one is actually a made-up language, Asgardian. You might remember that time on the train? The time Loki got drunk and sang in Asgardian. Spoiler alert, it was just Norwegian. But Norwegian is very cool, and so Tom, the actor, read up on Old Norse mythology to understand where Norwegian came from, and he worked with dialect coaches to practice the language, which is good because they only gave him 4 days to learn the song.
You know, when you have to learn something very quickly, well, you have to do that every day probably, but and you just kind of like get obsessed. I was so worried I was going to offend a whole nation of people. And
next thing you know, the song actually hit the charts. Yes, in real life.
I hope that they weren't offended by the fact that I was butchering their native tongue. And
Do you speak Norwegian?
I speak the words of that song.
I see, just that.
Yeah. Different vowel sounds.
By the way, Norwegian does actually come from the Vikings language, but luckily it's a lot easier. Old Norse had very tricky grammar for one thing, although I don't think that would put Tom Hiddleston off. Just wait, you will see what I mean in just a second. Meanwhile, Loki even knows Latin and Greek. In the show, you see, he's prancing around Pompeii just before the volcano erupts.
Praefectus consilii ad tempus mutandem, atque ad ferro acervum nuntium ad vos omnes. Vos omnes.
Well, that is exactly how you would introduce yourself in Latin, and his accent is pretty good too. In fact, the fans who know Latin went berserk because Loki speaks with the correct classical pronunciation that they used in that era, as in just like the old Romans spoke. Now, Loki may be a trickster, but Tom's language skills, well, they're no trick.
Wow,
so here is a little known fact. Tom didn't just pick up Latin and Greek for fun. He studied them seriously at Cambridge. He's so good he can actually read the Odyssey in the original Greek. And that is no walk in the park. It's a very old epic story written in ancient Greek poetry. And he did not stop there.
I actually, while I was at Cambridge, I played Orestes in Sophocles' Electra in Greek.
In Greek?
In Greek, we did it in ancient Greek.
In ancient Greek.
Greek plays too? Well, Tom could give Loki a run for his money, but what's really cool is that these classical languages give him a deeper sense of how languages work. Way to open up new worlds, right? Is that all for Tom Hiddleston? No, not a chance. Way before he got into Latin and Greek, he was already doing something else.
Loki est jaloux, il est envieux, il est un peu en colère. De l'intérieur.
French people seem to like him, and that's a big win because apparently they find it cute when he asks how to say adopted in French.
Il est, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire adopted?
Adopté.
Adopté, il est adopté.
But I'm not done yet. This guy cannot stop learning languages.
Buongiorno Roma, buongiorno Italia.
Studio hace 15 años a escuela.
Ljubov po beždet nenavist.
Zarangheo Korea.
He's confident, I'll give him that. And here's Tom's best advice for you, in language and in life.
All the bare necessities, the simple bare necessity. Forget about your worries and your strife.
Start with the bare necessities.
Una cerveza, por favor. Sie hatten keinen Namen. Ihr Name wurde Ihnen weggenommen. Schweinebauern und Schneidern. Blut und Ehre. Ja, was würden Sie gerne zuerst verlieren?
Magneto starts out a supervillain and turns into a hero who speaks German and apparently Spanish. But Magneto speaks a few other languages too. It's life or death out there, didn't you know?
Ne jouons pas ce jeu.
Où vient cet ordre?
D'un ami qui m'a chaudement recommandé votre banque.
Możesz mnie aresztować. Proszę, wypuśćcie moją córkę.
Magneto's language skills link back to his traumatic past. He is a Holocaust survivor. But Michael Fassbender, well, he does a pretty good job at languages too.
Ich muss ja üben. Also mit meiner Mannschaft, mit Porsche, ich versuche mehr zu sprechen. Ich bin in Heidelberg geboren, also mein Vater ist Deutsch und meine Mutter ist Irisch.
So he's Irish-German. Grew up in Ireland and spent his summers in Germany. People sometimes say he's got a strange German accent, but come on, it's not like he's meant to sound like a native.
It's pretty embarrassing, my German, really. I mean, I can understand it much better than I can speak, but I have to improve.
He's actually spoken about how difficult it is to sound like a native in a language that you didn't grow up with. Surprise, surprise. So if you're worried about sounding perfect, well, take it from Fassbender himself. Perfection is not the point, and I do like the way he thinks.
Time changes, you're in a different mood, different environment. To never get set in one idea and think, okay, that's it, you know. There's a million ways to do something.
He is dead right. Besides, he's not the strangest one on this list. I mean, when Tom Hardy played Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, I don't know why they didn't give him any Spanish lines, but people couldn't stop talking about his voice.
The identity of the Trigger Man is a mystery.
Seriously, people say the strangest things, but does he care? No.
And found a character, a man called Bartley Gorman, who's a Romany gypsy. He said, when I get into a ring with a man, and all he wants to wipe me off the face of the earth, and all he wants to kill me. And I was like, oh, this is great.
He said that he likes to mess around with the music of an accent and focus on the rhythm and flow, which is cool. I mean, it's more important to sound natural than perfect, wouldn't you say? Speaking of which, my personal goal is to help you bring languages to life, but in a very natural way, so you can just be yourself when you're speaking that other language. That's why I think you will love the unique way that we teach here at Story Learning. It's what over 1 million people already use to learn languages, and it's the real deal. The thing is, I never really enjoyed endless grammar drills and textbooks. I wanted a way to really sink my teeth into the language and the culture right from the start, and that's why I created the Story Learning method. It's such a fun and effective way to learn a language through stories. Norwegian, Italian, German. What's on your bucket list? Well, we probably have it here at Story Learning, and if this sounds good, you can get a free peek inside the method. I have what's called a Story Learning kit. You can get it for free. You can scan the QR code up on this video, or you can go to the link in the video description below, which takes you to the same place. The Story Learning kit is packed with video masterclasses, audio guides, fun printables. None of Loki's tricks in there, I promise. It's just good old-fashioned helpful stuff. So go ahead and check it out. Now, where were we? He's a bit of a strange genius, this actor, because he hates the sound of his own voice. But I heard he was cast in a mystery role for the next Fantastic Four.
Hello, my name is John Malkovich.
I don't sound anything like that.
No, you sound exactly like this.
John Malkovich has played many villains in the past. He was the French Javert in Les Miserables and a Russian mobster in Rounders.
Very aggressive. A new day. And you won't be pushed around.
Don't expect realism there, Murnau.
That was his Russian accent, and was that Dafoe?
Si.
But I wonder if you heard the news. Malkovich just got picked up by the Fantastic Four to play... Okay, well, I don't have the info, but it has to be some menacing bad guy, surely. I mean, this is Malkovich here. But will they make him speak another language? Because I heard he's got the skills.
J'aime la réalisation et tout ça, et aussi le montage, mixage, tout ça. Mais toutes les choses tout autour pour avoir le moyen pour faire ça, c'est vraiment pas mon truc.
Yep, and Malkovich isn't just pretending when he speaks French, he's actually fluent, and he's even starred in a French movie.
Comme ça, j'ai au moins fait quelqu'un d'heureux.
So I guess French people like him too. He learned French from scratch while living in France, and his story is that once, long ago, he worked in the French theatre scene, and in his own words, he said, sometimes you just need to adapt, and I couldn't agree more. I worked in Paris when I was 19, and you just survive. I remember getting a job in a youth hostel and pretending that I spoke French and understood everything when really I didn't. But guess what? I learned French that way. So sometimes blagging it is the best way forward. Now, I'll be honest, Malkovich, when he speaks French, he makes a few mistakes that a lot of English speakers make. It's hard to avoid those.
Attends!
il a parlé avec le...
Putain, je t'ai dit.
But he also uses typical French expressions like, okay, you're going to know how we say things in English, like bite the bullet. He does that kind of thing in French, which means he's good. You only really pick things like that up when you're hanging out with native speakers. So he's very natural and authentic, and that's a really great way to approach language learning.
I speak French, but you find with languages is something you really have to practice.
You do need to practice, and if you only know 20 words, well, that's great. Put them all together and say something. You have to start somewhere. By the way, have you ever wondered how actors deliver lines so well in a language that they can't actually speak?
Если мне убьют, не будут и меня, лучше умереть, чем жить в вашем мире.
All I'm going to say is, Mickey Rourke is damn scary in Russian, and he puts in heaps of hard work to nail it, believe me. He even interviewed real Russian prisoners. Can you imagine doing something like that? That's dedication to your craft right there. But someone else did it better, so hang tight for the real badass who's coming up a little bit later. Now back to those foreign language lines that they have to learn. It's not as complicated as it sounds. It just takes an absolute ton of practice. They get dialect coaches on set who write out the lines phonetically for them, something like this. See what I mean? So you wouldn't have to read the real Russian words, which would of course be difficult if you don't read any Cyrillic. So you just say the sounds exactly as they're spelled out, and it should kind of sound like Russian, you would hope, right? Maybe not. I don't know. They do try hard things to get the sound of the language right, like the intonation, the ups and downs of the voice, right? So the actor gets these recordings so that they can listen on repeat, and sometimes they bring in native speakers to help, or even give them a crash course in the language, which is pretty cool when we're talking about supervillains. I mean, Hawkeye uses American Sign Language, and Doctor Strange does his magic in a language called Sanskrit. An even crazier one of the earliest mutants spoke Ancient Egyptian. There are a bunch of other tricks, maybe I'll make a video about them sometime, but nothing stopping an actor from taking it further if they want to. And trust me, you can tell who bothered. You can tell who put the effort in, especially that one villain who went to insane lengths. That's coming up. But first, remember this adorable fellow?
But the one thing they love more than a hero is to see a hero fail, fall, die trying.
Green Goblin in Spider-Man is a legendary character, even though he doesn't speak another language. But did you know that Willem Dafoe can speak Italian and Spanish?
Speak Italian, sì, perché mia moglie è italiana e anche abita in Roma. I married an Italian, and she didn't want to give up Rome, and I said, I'm okay with that.
Come stai?
Bene, bene, bene.
And apparently he loves learning languages.
I could do this all day.
Me too, Willem. So how does he do it? Well, first of all, he takes Italian lessons once a week and reads a little Italian every morning. And I approve very strongly reading is a must if you want to get good at a language, and just a page or two is absolutely fine. It's an amazing way to start picking up grammar naturally without even studying.
Difficile sì, però è bellissima, quindi c'è sta motivazione in più, capito? È troppo bella la lingua italiana, è cantata, è bella, è espressiva.
Yes, and Italian is actually one of the easier ones, like a lot easier than a lot of other languages. Ever seen this? It's the FSI, Foreign Service Institute chart. It's an official language chart that ranks languages according to how long it takes to learn them. They've actually tested this, and you can learn Italian in a few months if you do a little bit every day. But listen, it doesn't hurt having a wife who speaks the language that you're learning.
If you're speaking Italian with her, she gets like a 5-year-old version of yourself, so it kind of puts stress on the relationship. But at the same time, I need her to speak in Italian so I can learn.
The best part is this movie mirrored his own life.
When I speak to you in Italian, help me. Please don't answer in English, huh?
He gets upset with his wife because of the very thing that I said I struggle with my wife.
He said that he hears her throwing in dialect words and slang when she speaks to Italians, and he remembers it. Another very good thing he does when they're with Italians is he insists they all speak Italian. Now, foreigners will often just switch to English to accommodate you, but it's okay to ask them not to. It's okay to say, look, can we just stick in Italian because I'm trying to practice, trying to learn. It's really great to get into the habit of doing this if you're learning a language, because otherwise you can just spend your whole life learning and then having other people speaking to you in English, which is not great. So get into that habit. And if you sign up for a few practice sessions with a native speaker just to chat a little bit, ask them to speak a bit in the exact way that they would speak with other Italians, not just with their students. So you get to really experience the language.
Netflix ha finanziato tanti film, questo è una buona cosa.
Adesso lui ha la traduzione, ma lei l'italiano lo capisce bene?
Sì.
No, qui devo stare attento.
Non sono in grado di fare un'intervista in
Non è
italiano.
vero.
Okay, so he doesn't really know enough Italian to do an actual interview, but he knows what they're saying.
Dans le passeport, j'écris simplement écrivait.
Wait, he spoke French there? I wish Marvel would come up with some French lines for Dafoe, but just like Tom Hiddleston, he certainly gets enough practice doing accents.
You're fond of me, lobster.
I did have a dialect coach that helped me with it, of course, but at the heart of it, it was something in my imagination and something I heard.
Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow.
Scottish accent, German accent, what do you think? He's pretty good, huh? Mind you, in The Lighthouse, Dafoe actually made up the accent. It's Scottish, but with a bit of pirate and imagination thrown in. I absolutely love it. And remember how actors learn their lines? Well, that's exactly how he did it for this movie, where he had to speak Aramaic and Hebrew. If you love languages, just dive in any way you can.
Try to make a bad painting. Try to act badly. Try to be lousy in that scene. It kind of puts the idea of striving for perfection on, it does something.
Yeah. In other words,
So
maybe try really hard to fail and then watch playback and go, that was interesting.
Best advice of the day. And if you can let yourself be free, you'll learn any language faster. Now, don't get mad at me. The ultimate language master villain has not been a villain in a Marvel or DC universe, but they did ask him to play Wolverine. He just said no.
Forget any of this ever happened. Stay away from people like me.
Viggo Mortensen? But isn't he always a good guy? Well, not when he played a Russian gangster. He's actually done a few villain roles, but here's what really gets me. The insane commitment he has when learning languages.
Yeah.
You won't believe what he did for this one movie, full respect. Now, if you're not sure who Viggo is, maybe you've seen him as Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. He learned to speak Elvish for the role. In case you're wondering, Elvish is a completely made-up language. Listen, Elvish has grammar rules. No joke. It's so cool that he learned this, but the guy's a language legend. He speaks at least 8 languages in real life.
Son formas de comunicarme, ¿no? O sea, todas son parecidas en eso. Der var tørt, der var varmt, det var vind og alt den sand, der var i luften hele tiden, men det var så smukt.
Anyway, this Russian gangster role was for Eastern Promises. It's a thriller about Russian mobsters in London. Now, most actors just use those tricks we talked about and move on, but Viggo, he goes above and beyond. He flies to Russia by himself, no translator. He wanted to be in the exact region his character came from and watch people so he could copy how they talked. Accent, body language, everything else.
Well, you learn a lot. If you want to, you can learn all kinds of things. I mean, I learned not just about the Russian language, which you hear me speak, and a particular kind of slang, but also just a body language, an attitude toward outsiders, those that are not from Russia.
So first he learned some Russian, and then he drove himself all over the Ural Mountains, Moscow, St. Petersburg, just soaking up the culture. He watched Russian TV, listened to tapes, read books about the prisons and gangs, and of course, nailed the Siberian accent. I mean, why not? Apparently he even hung out with a few sketchy Russians. Didn't Mickey Rourke do that too? I think he did. Now, can you imagine doing all of this for a language that you are learning? Maybe not, but if you did, you would really find yourself getting inside the language a lot faster. Now, he also had some Ukrainian lines to learn. That's right, so he came home and decorated his trailer with Russian icons and these special worry beads from the Russian prisoners. Anything else? Well, yes, he learned the meaning behind the 43 criminal tattoos that they gave him for the role.
There's one that says, "Let all I have lived be as if it were a dream."
That's right, and he's even got all this Russian stuff documented in a scrapbook.
And I would look at it each day and maybe add to it, add words or new phrases in Russian I'd learned, things like that.
What a legend. And Viggo always commits to languages this way. He's so convincing, he actually scared some Russians at a diner who thought he was real mafia. A true badass language learner. Just one little favor, please do not go to prison for your languages. Honestly, it is not worth it. Just don't tell them it was my idea, whatever you do. Now, there's one last story I've saved just for you. This guy is making people's heads spin with his bizarre language tricks. Wait, I don't think that's a villain at all. Isn't he a hero? He is. And if you want to see how soldiers in the French Foreign Legion are forced to learn French in record time or suffer the consequences, you're going to love this next video over here. It's fast, it's brutal, it's effective, and those guys are absolutely nuts.